I am Vanessa, 29 years old, and I have lived with epilepsy since I was 15. In my family, my younger sister Melody was always the golden child, while I was the problem with the inconvenient medical condition. When our grandmother passed away, leaving me a larger inheritance to help with my medical expenses, my sister started stealing my medication. My parents dismissed my concerns. Sharing is caring, they said. Little did I know that my next seizure would happen in a courtroom, changing everything. Before I continue this story, let me know where you are watching from in the comments. Hit that like button and subscribe to hear what the judge discovered that finally made my family face the truth. My journey with epilepsy began during my sophomore year of high school. I was sitting in math class when the room suddenly started spinning. I remember the fluorescent lights becoming unbearably bright before everything went dark. I woke up in an ambulance, confused and terrified. After numerous tests and a 3-day hospital stay, the neurologist delivered the diagnosis epilepsy. Life changed dramatically after that. My backpack now carried medication alongside textbooks. My routine revolved around precise dosing schedules. My parents reacted with a mixture of concern and annoyance, treating my condition like an inconvenience rather than a serious medical issue. "Try not to mention it," my mother would say before family gatherings. "People get uncomfortable." My sister Melody, 2 years younger, quickly learned how my condition could benefit her. When I needed rest after a particularly rough day, my parents would scold me for not helping with chores. Meanwhile, Melody would dramatically volunteer to pick up the slack, earning praise for her selflessness. When my medication made me drowsy during family movie nights, my father would sigh. "Maybe you should just go to bed," while Melody curled up in my spot on the couch. Only my grandmother, Ellen, saw through the dynamic. A retired nurse, she understood epilepsy was not something I could control or exaggerate for attention. During weekend visits to her home, she created a safe space where my medical needs were respected. "Never apologize for taking care of yourself," she would tell me. "Your health is not negotiable." Grandma Ellen kept detailed journals about her own health and encouraged me to do the same. Together, we created a medication tracking system that helped me maintain perfect compliance. She bought me a beautiful wooden box with a lock for my pills, explaining, "Medicine is personal. You do not need to display it for everyone to see or comment on." When I moved into my own apartment after college, securing a job as a graphic designer that allowed me to work remotely when necessary, Grandma Ellen was my biggest supporter. She helped me furnish the place, making sure I had a proper medicine cabinet and backup power for my alarm system in case of outages. My parents, meanwhile, questioned whether I really needed to live alone and suggested I move in with Melody, who had a spare room in her house. The thought of surrendering my independence to live under my sister's scrutiny was unimaginable. 3 months ago, Grandma Ellen passed away peacefully in her sleep. The grief hit me in waves, leaving me feeling untethered. She had been my advocate, my support system, and often the only family member who validated my experiences. The day after her funeral, as family gathered at her house, I found myself sitting alone in her kitchen holding the wooden medication box she had given me years ago. It was in that moment that the family lawyer, Mr. Harrison, asked to speak with me privately. "Your grandmother left specific instructions regarding her estate," he explained gently. "The majority of her assets are to be divided between you and Melody, but not equally. She allocated 60% to you with a note explaining it was to ensure your continued medical care." He paused, adjusting his glasses. "She was quite specific about wanting to provide you with financial security given your health considerations." I felt a rush of gratitude for my grandmother's foresight, followed immediately by dread about how my family would react. My fears were justified. When Mr. Harrison gathered everyone to explain the will's provisions, the room temperature seemed to drop several degrees. My mother's face tightened while my father cleared his throat repeatedly. Melody, sitting across from me, transformed before my eyes. Her expression shifted from shock to something darker, calculating. "That cannot possibly be what Mom intended." My mother said Venasane has always exaggerated her condition for attention. Mom must have been confused when she made these arrangements. Mr. Harrison remained professional but firm. Ellen was of completely sound mind. We discussed her wishes at length, and she was quite clear about her reasoning. That evening, as family members drifted away from Grandma's house for the last time, Melody cornered me in the hallway. "You think you have won, do not you?" she whispered, always playing the sick card. Well, this is not over. In the weeks that followed, I noticed small things going missing in my apartment after family visits. A favorite mug, a photo of Grandma and me, small enough that I questioned my own memory, end and of cross stand of Lashend. Was I becoming forgetful due to stress? Then one morning, I opened my medication container to find 3 pills missing from the weekly organizer. I recounted thinking I had made an error, but I was certain they had been there the night before. When I called my parents to ask if anyone had been in my apartment, my mother sighed. "Are you accusing Melody?" "She dropped by to bring you dinner yesterday because she was worried about you. This is how you thank her." "I am just asking if someone might have moved my medication," I clarified. "You probably took them and forgot," my father said dismissively. "Or dropped them. Have you checked under the bathroom counter?" I searched everywhere, finding nothing. When I called my pharmacy for an early refill, the pharmacist explained my insurance would not cover it. "These are controlled medications," she explained apologetically. "We cannot replace them without documentation of theft or loss." 2 days later, Mr. Harrison called about setting a court date. The will was being formally contested by my sister with my parents' support. They were claiming Grandma Ellen had been unduly influenced by me during her final years. As I hung up the phone, I noticed my medication container had been moved slightly on the counter. Opening it with shaking hands, I discovered another pill missing. A pattern was emerging, and with it, a horrifying realization. Someone was targeting not just my inheritance but my health. After the second incident of missing medication, I knew I needed to take serious precautions. I purchased a small safe with a combination lock and stored all my prescription bottles inside. The safe went into my bedroom closet, hidden behind winter boots and old photo albums. It seemed excessive, even paranoid. But the alternative was risking more missing doses of a medication my neurologist had repeatedly stressed I should never skip. For nearly a week, my system worked. I opened the safe each morning and evening, taking my prescribed dose and immediately locking the remaining pills away. The routine provided a sense of security, however fragile. Then came Sunday dinner at my parents' house, a tradition Grandma Ellen had always insisted upon, and which now felt like a minefield of tension and unspoken accusations. "You look tired," my mother commented the moment I walked through the door. "Are you taking care of yourself?" "I am fine," I answered automatically. The kitchen smelled of pot roast, Melody's favorite that our mother only made on special occasions. I wondered what accomplishment of my sister's we would be celebrating tonight. Melody got a promotion at work, my father announced right on cue. Junior account executive now. Melody appeared from the living room wearing a new dress and a smile that did not quite reach her eyes. "Nothing fancy," she said with practiced modesty, "just recognition for hard work." Throughout dinner, the conversation revolved around Melody's achievement, the challenges of her new position, and how she had always been destined for success. I nodded and smiled in all the right places while simultaneously calculating how soon I could politely leave. My medication schedule meant I needed to take my evening dose by 8:30. "I need to head out around 8, I mentioned during a lull in conversation. "I have an early client meeting tomorrow." My mother frowned. "But I made your favorite apple pie for dessert." "Surely you can stay a little longer. I really cannot. I have my medication schedule to keep." My father put down his fork with a clatter. "Always the medication, always the schedule. Life requires flexibility. Vanessa, epilepsy does not." I replied, trying to keep my voice level. "Missing doses can trigger seizures. I think what Dad means," Melody interjected smoothly, "is that sometimes family time should take priority. We hardly see you anymore." Before I could respond, Melody stood up. "I will get coffee. Vanessa, would you help me?" In the kitchen, as Melody measured coffee grounds, she asked casually, "So, how are you really doing with Grandma gone and everything?" "I miss her," I said honestly. She understood what living with epilepsy is like. "Must be hard," Melody murmured her back to me as she reached for mugs. "Having to manage everything yourself now." Something in her tone made me uneasy. "I am managing fine." "Of course you are," she turned smiling. "Hey, I left my phone in my purse in the guest room. Would you grab it while I finish this?" The request seemed innocent enough, but when I returned to the kitchen after retrieving her phone, I noticed Melody hurriedly moving away from my jacket hanging by the door. She returned to the coffee maker, for her movements too casual, too deliberate. I made my excuses shortly after claiming fatigue. Back in my apartment, I went straight to my safe, entered the combination, and did a pill count. Everything was in order. Relieved, but still uneasy, I took my evening dose and went to bed. The next morning, I woke to a text from Melody. "Left my scarf at your place last week. Coming by to get it around noon, if that is okay." I had no recollection of Melody leaving a scarf, but I replied with a simple, "okay," before heading to work. When I returned home that evening, something felt off. Nothing was visibly disturbed, but the energy in my apartment had shifted somehow. I went directly to my closet and opened the safe. 5 pills were missing from my weekly organizer. Panic surged through me. This was no longer a few pills here and there. This was enough to potentially trigger a serious seizure if I could not replace them. I called my pharmacy immediately, explaining the situation in detail. "I am sorry, Miss Moore," the pharmacist said, "but your insurance will not cover a replacement this early. These medications are strictly regulated. How much would they cost out of pocket?" I asked desperately. The amount, she quoted, made my stomach drop. Without insurance coverage, I was looking at several hundred I simply did not have until my next paycheck. That night at dinner with my parents, I decided to be direct. "I need to talk to you both about something serious." I began, my hands clasped tightly under the table. "Someone has been taking my epilepsy medication." My mother's eyebrows shot up. "What are you talking about? Pills have gone missing repeatedly. At first it was just 1 or 2, but now 5 disappeared today. It is dangerous for me to miss doses." My father frowned. "Are you certain you did not miss out or take them without remembering? I am positive I keep careful track. This is my health we are talking about." My mother sighed dramatically. "And I suppose you think Melody took them. Why would she possibly want your medication?" I do not know why I admitted, but the timing matches up with her visits. Melody chose that moment to enter the dining room carrying a casserole dish. "What matches up with my visits?" she asked innocently. My mother explained my accusations while Melody's expression transformed from confusion to hurt. It was a masterful performance. "How could you think that Melody's voice quavered perfectly?" "I would never mess with your health, Vanessa. Never." "Then how do you explain the missing pills I pressed?" My father slammed his hand on the table. "Enough. I cannot believe you would accuse your sister of something so serious without any proof." "Sharing is caring, Vanessa," my mother added. "If you are so worried about running out, perhaps you should consider that Melody might occasionally need support too. Stop being so dramatic about your condition." "Dramatic," I echoed in disbelief. "Epilepsy is not something I can turn on and off for convenience. Missing medication can lead to breakthrough seizures, which can be life-threatening." "There you go again," my mother said with an eye roll. "Always the worst-case scenario with you." Melody reached across the table to squeeze my hand, her eyes wide with counterfeit concern. "I am sure we will find your missing pills. Maybe they fell somewhere in your apartment." I pulled my hand away, feeling physically ill from the gaslighting. Throughout the rest of dinner, Melody maintained her concerned sister act, offering to help me get organized with my medications. My parents beamed at her generosity while shooting disapproving glances my way. As I drove home, my vision blurred with tears of frustration. In the bathroom that night, I noticed the warning signs my body was sending. The subtle twitch in my right hand, the slight difficulty focusing my eyes, the unusual fatigue. They were the precursors I had learned to recognize over years of living with epilepsy signals that my medication levels were dropping too low. Standing at the sink, gripping the counter for support, I faced the terrifying reality my own sister was putting my life at risk and my parents were enabling her behavior. Worse still, I had no idea how to make them believe me before something truly catastrophic happened. The week before our scheduled court hearing, the situation reached a breaking point. I woke up Tuesday morning to discover that nearly half of my remaining medication was missing from the safe. The combination had been changed, which could only mean one thing. Someone had watched me enter it. My mind flashed to Sunday dinner when I had excused myself to take my evening dose. Had Melody followed me, the timing could not have been worse. My bank account was nearly empty after paying rent, and my next paycheck was still 4 days away. Without medication, I was facing a dangerous gap in treatment. In desperation, I called my neurologist's office and explained the situation. "This is Dr. Walker's nurse, Jen," said the voice on the line. "The doctor can see you at 11 this morning. Can you make it?" 3 hours later, I sat in Dr. Walker's office, exhausted and frightened. She was a petite woman with silver-streaked hair and a no-nonsense demeanor that had always reassured me. "How long has the medication been going missing?" she asked, reviewing my chart. "About 3 weeks, but it has gotten worse. Yesterday was the largest amount taken so far, and you have secured your medication in a safe. But someone changed the combination." Dr. Walker's expression darkened. "Vanessa, what you are describing is theft of a controlled substance. That is a serious crime. Have you filed a police report?" I stared at my hands. "It is complicated. I believe it is my sister taking them, but I cannot prove it. My parents do not believe me." "Your sister, Dr. Walker," looked up sharply. "Why would she take epilepsy medication? We are in a legal battle over our grandmother's inheritance." "She left me more because of my medical expenses. My sister is contesting the will." Understanding dawned in Dr. Walker's eyes. "So, this could be an attempt to discredit you, or perhaps worse, to trigger a medical crisis." The possibility spoken aloud by a medical professional sent chills through me. I had not thought of it quite that way. Dr. Walker typed rapidly on her computer. "I am documenting everything you have told me. This is potentially life-threatening, Vanessa. Without your medication, you are at high risk for breakthrough seizures, which could lead to status epilepticus." "Status epilepticus," I repeated. "A prolonged seizure state that can cause permanent brain damage or death if not treated promptly." She looked at me over her glasses. "I cannot stress enough how serious this is." Dr. Walker prescribed an emergency supply of medication, writing a letter to the pharmacy explaining the medical necessity. She also provided me with documentation of our visit and her concerns about potential medication theft. "I want you to consider showing this to the police," she said, handing me the papers. "And to the judge if necessary, your health must be protected." With the doctor's letter, the pharmacy provided a 5-day emergency supply, though I still had to pay out of pocket. It was expensive, but it would keep me safe until after the court date. I felt a small measure of relief as I swallowed that evening's dose. The next day, I attempted to show my parents the documentation from Dr. Walker, medical records. "Really, Vanessa?" My mother barely glanced at the papers. "This seems excessive." Dr. Walker believes someone is deliberately targeting my medication. She says it is dangerous and potentially criminal. My father shook his head. "And you showed this doctor our private family business, told her about the inheritance dispute. What were you thinking?" "I was thinking that I do not want to have a seizure or die because someone is stealing my medication." My voice rose despite my efforts to remain calm. "Now you are just trying to manipulate the situation," my mother said coldly. "Using your condition to gain sympathy before the court date. It is transparent." "Vanessa." My father nodded in agreement. "This is low even for you. Trying to paint Melody as some kind of criminal to influence the inheritance case." As if summoned, Melody appeared in the doorway, her eyes already brimming with tears. "Is that what you think of me?" she asked, her voice breaking perfectly. That I would endanger your health for money. The medication does not just disappear, I said, struggling to keep my voice steady. And the timing aligns perfectly with your visits. Maybe you are taking more than prescribed. Melody suggested, a hint of steel beneath her wounded tone. Or selling them yourself. Those medications have street value. You know, the accusation was so outrageous that I could only stare at her in shock. My father put his arm around Melody protectively. That is enough, Vanessa, he said. I will not have you upsetting your sister with these unfounded accusations. The court will sort this all out next week. I left my parents' house feeling more alone than ever. That evening, my friend Lisa came over with takeout and a sympathetic ear. Lisa had been my roommate in college and had witnessed several of my seizures. She understood the reality of my condition in ways my family never had. You need to document everything, she advised as we sat on my couch. Take photos of your pill containers. Keep a log of exactly when pills go missing. Note who had access to your apartment. I have started doing that, I admitted, but it feels paranoid. It is not paranoid if someone is actually tampering with your medication, Lisa pointed out. This is serious, Vanessa. Your sister sounds unhinged. The worst part is that my parents are enabling her. They always have. Lisa's expression hardened. Then you need to be prepared to advocate for yourself without their support. What does your lawyer say? Mr. Harrison is concerned. He thinks Melody's challenge to the will is weak, but he is worried about my parents' testimony. If they claim Grandma was manipulated by me, but she was not. Your grandmother was sharp as a tack, and she understood exactly what she was doing. I nodded, feeling a rush of gratitude for my friend's unwavering support. The court date is Monday. I just need to make it through the weekend safely. But the universe had other plans. Sunday evening, as I prepared for bed, a wave of dizziness hit me so suddenly that I had to grab the bathroom counter for support. My vision blurred at the edges, and my right hand began to twitch uncontrollably. They were warning signs I had experienced before, precursors to a potential seizure. I double-checked that I had taken my evening medication and tried to calm myself. Stress could lower my seizure threshold, making an episode more likely. I practiced the breathing exercises my therapist had taught me, but the sense of foreboding remained. Something was wrong. Despite the emergency medication from Dr. Walker, my body was sending warning signals. As I climbed into bed, I set out my court clothes for the morning and placed Dr. Walker's documentation in my bag. Whatever happened in court tomorrow, I would be prepared to fight for myself, even if I had to do it alone. What I could not have anticipated was just how dramatically the truth would reveal itself, or that my greatest vulnerability would become my strongest evidence. Monday morning dawned with an ominous gray sky that matched my mood. I had slept poorly, waking repeatedly, with the distinct feeling that something was not right within my body. My limbs felt heavy, my thoughts slightly disconnected. I recognized these symptoms with the familiarity of someone who had lived with epilepsy for 13 years. My medication levels were not where they needed to be despite the emergency supply. I dressed carefully in the navy blue pantsuit I had laid out the night before, a gift from Grandma Ellen on my 27th birthday. For important occasions, she had said with a wink, she would have understood the significance of today's hearing. How much was at stake beyond just the inheritance? My parents had insisted on driving together to the courthouse, a performance of family unity that felt suffocating. Melody sat in the front passenger seat, occasionally catching my eye in the visor mirror. There was something triumphant in her gaze that sent a chill through me. "Did you take your medicine this morning?" my mother asked as we neared the courthouse, her tone suggesting she was merely being considerate. "Yes," I answered, simply not mentioning the tremor in my right hand that had started while brushing my teeth. "Good," my father said. "We do not need any episodes today." The courthouse was an imposing stone building in downtown Chicago, its steps already crowded with people despite the early hour. Mr. Harrison waited for us at the entrance, his briefcase clutched in both hands. His expression brightened when he saw me, then dimmed slightly as my family approached. "Vanessa," he greeted me warmly. "How are you feeling today?" Before I could answer, my mother interjected. "She is fine. Let us just get this over with." Mr. Harrison gave me a concerned look but did not press further. "We are in courtroom 3. Judge Harmon is presiding. She is fair but does not tolerate delays or dramatics." As we walked through security and down the marble hallway, I noticed Melody whispering something to our father. He nodded, his expression hardening as he glanced my way. Whatever she had said, it had reinforced his position against me. Courtroom 3 was smaller than I had imagined, with polished wooden benches and walls of dark paneling. A handful of other people were already seated, mostly legal professionals in suits. Melody's lawyer, a sharp-faced woman named Miss Reynolds, waited at the defense table. She and Melody exchanged a look that seemed loaded with meaning. We took our seats at the plaintiff's table with Mr. Harrison arranging his documents meticulously. The fluorescent lights overhead seemed unusually bright to me, each one surrounded by a slight halo. Another warning sign. I reached into my purse for my emergency medication. A single dose I kept for situations exactly like this, but my fingers found only empty space where the pill case should have been. Panic surged through me. I distinctly remembered placing it in my purse last night, checking twice to ensure it was there. Now it was gone. I looked up to see Melody watching me, the corner of her mouth lifted in a subtle smirk. "All rise for the Honorable Judge Catherine Harmon, called the bailiff." We stood as the judge entered, a tall woman with steel-gray hair pulled back in a severe bun. She nodded once before taking her seat, indicating we should do the same. "We are here in the matter of the estate of Ellen Grace. More." Judge Harmon began, her voice crisp and authoritative. "I have reviewed the filings from both parties. Before we proceed, are there any preliminary matters counsel wishes to address?" Mr. Harrison stood. "Your Honor, I would like to note for the record that my client Vanessa Moore has raised serious concerns about her personal safety and medical care that may be relevant to these proceedings." Judge Harmon raised an eyebrow. "Explain, counselor." "Miss Moore has reason to believe that her prescription epilepsy medication has been repeatedly stolen, potentially by interested parties in this case. She has documentation from her neurologist expressing concern about this interference with her medical treatment." Melody's attorney jumped to her feet. "Objection, Your Honor. These allegations are completely unfounded and appear to be a transparent attempt to prejudice the court against my client. I will determine what is or is not relevant, Miss Reynolds," Judge Harmon said firmly. "Mr. Harrison, please provide the court with this documentation." As Mr. Harrison handed the papers to the bailiff, I became acutely aware of a change in my perception. The courtroom seemed to be receding slightly, sounds becoming muffled as if I were underwater. I recognized the aura that often preceded a seizure and gripped the edge of the table, trying to ground myself. "Your Honor," Melody's attorney was saying, "my client categorically denies any involvement with Miss Moore's medication. Furthermore, we contend that Miss Moore has a history of exaggerating her medical condition for attention and financial gain." Judge Harmon scanned Dr. Walker's documentation. "These are serious concerns raised by a medical professional. Miss Reynolds, does your client have any explanation for the missing medication? Only that Miss Moore may be careless with her prescriptions, or perhaps using more than prescribed. There is absolutely no evidence linking my client to any missing medication." The judge turned her attention to me. "Miss Moore, when did you first notice your medication was missing?" I tried to focus on her face, but my vision was tunneling. 3 weeks ago, Your Honor. Shortly after the reading of my grandmother's will, and you believe your sister is responsible based on what evidence?" I opened my mouth to respond, but the words seemed stuck. The courtroom lights were now painfully bright, each one pulsing with unnatural intensity. I was losing my grip on consciousness, sliding toward the seizure I had been trying desperately to prevent. Miss Moore, Judge Harmon prompted her expression, shifting from professional curiosity to concern. She She was there when pills went missing. I managed my speech, beginning to slur. Emergency dose gone from my purse today. The judge leaned forward, her brow furrowed. Miss Moore, are you all right? I was not all right. The aura was intensifying, reality warping around me. I turned desperately toward Mr. Harrison. Happening, I whispered. Seizure. Mr. Harrison's eyes widened in recognition. Your Honor, my client is experiencing a medical emergency. She appears to be having a seizure. I need medical assistance in courtroom 3. Immediately, Judge Harmon ordered sharply to the bailiff, who moved quickly to the door. I was aware of movement around me, voices raised in alarm, but they seemed distant, unrelated to my immediate experience. My body was no longer under my control. The tremor in my hand had escalated to violent shaking, and my vision fractured into kaleidoscopic patterns. Give her space, someone shouted. She is faking it, came Melody's voice, though I could no longer see her. She always does this for attention. Step back, please, Judge Harmon commanded. Bailiff, clear the area around Miss Moore. My last clear memory was of sliding from my chair, my body giving way completely to the seizure. I heard my mother's gasp, my father's curse of dismay, and then consciousness fragmented as the grand mal seizure took hold. Through the haze of semi-awareness that sometimes accompanies seizures, I registered fragments of the scene. Judge Harmon kneeling beside me, her judicial robe pulled on the floor, the bailiff radioing urgently for paramedics, Mr. Harrison removing his jacket to place under my head, and Melody standing apart from the others, her expression a complex mixture of horror and calculation as she clutched her purse tightly against her body. The paramedics are here, someone announced. She has epilepsy. Mr. Harrison was explaining to the EMTs. She believes someone has been stealing her medication. BP is dropping, one paramedic said. How long has she been seizing? Nearly 3 minutes now. We need to administer emergency anti-seizure medication. Does anyone know what she normally takes? It should be in her medical records, Judge Harmon said. And I want those records sent to my chambers immediately along with Miss Moore's personal belongings and those of her sister. Your Honor, you cannot possibly think. Melody began. Miss Reynolds, control your client. Judge Harmon snapped. Bailiff, I want Miss Melody Moore's purse seized and inventoried as potential evidence. No one leaves this courtroom until I determine exactly what has happened here. As the paramedics work to stabilize me, preparing to transport me to the hospital, Judge Harmon's voice cut through my fading awareness with crystal clarity. This hearing is suspended pending investigation of possible criminal activity. If I find that anyone has deliberately interfered with Miss Moore's medical treatment, there will be severe consequences. Those were the last words I heard before consciousness slipped away entirely. My body continuing its desperate rebellion against the medication deprivation it had endured. I awoke to the steady beeping of hospital monitors and the distinctive antiseptic smell of a medical facility. My eyelids felt impossibly heavy, but I managed to open them enough to make out a blurry figure sitting beside the bed. As my vision cleared, Lisa's worried face came into focus. Hey, there you are, she said softly, reaching for my hand. You really scared us. My throat felt raw, my tongue thick and uncooperative. Lisa held a cup of water with a straw to my lips, and the cool liquid provided blessed relief. What happened? I managed to ask, though. The words came out slurred. You had a seizure in court. A bad one. The paramedics had to give you emergency medication to stop it. Fragments of memory returned the bright courtroom lights. The feeling of sliding away from reality. Judge Harmon ordering medical assistance. How long have I been here? About 6 hours, Lisa replied, checking her watch. It is just past 4 in the afternoon. A doctor entered the room, clipboard in hand. She was middle-aged with kind eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. Miss Moore, I am Dr. Patel. You are in Northwestern Memorial Hospital. You experienced a prolonged tonic-clonic seizure that required emergency intervention. Was it bad? I asked, though I already knew the answer from the gravity in her expression. It was concerning, Doctor. Patel confirmed. The seizure lasted over 5 minutes, which puts it in the category of status epilepticus. We had to administer intravenous anticonvulsants to terminate it. She consulted her clipboard. Your blood work showed dangerously low levels of your anti-seizure medication well below the therapeutic range. Can you tell me why that might be? Before I could respond, there was a knock at the door. A tall man in a police uniform entered, followed by Mr. Harrison. Miss Moore, this is Detective Ramirez. Mr. Harrison introduced. He has some questions if you are feeling up to it. Doctor. Patel gave the detective a stern look. My patient is recovering from a serious medical event. I will allow brief questions only, and I will remain present. Detective Ramirez nodded respectfully. Understood, Doctor. Miss Moore, I am investigating a potential case of prescription medication theft. Judge Harmon ordered an examination of your belongings and those of your sister following your seizure in court. He paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. We found 3 prescription bottles in your sister's purse. The labels match your name and medication. The confirmation of what I had suspected hit me with physical force. Despite my suspicions, some part of me had hoped I was wrong about Melody. She has been taking them for weeks, I said, my voice stronger now. Small amounts at first, then more and more. Can you tell me when you first noticed medication missing? Detective Ramirez asked, pulling out a small notebook. I recounted the timeline, the first missing pills after Grandma's funeral, the escalating theft, my attempts to secure the medication, the confrontations with my family, and finally the disappearance of my emergency dose that very morning. And your parents were aware of your concerns? He asked. I told them repeatedly. They dismissed it. Said I was being dramatic or trying to manipulate the situation because of the inheritance dispute? Detective Ramirez made notes, while Mr. Harrison filled in details about the contested will. The court ordered blood tests to confirm your medication levels. Dr. Patel added, the results are conclusive. You have approximately 30% of the expected concentration in your system, consistent with missed doses over several days. A soft knock interrupted us, and a nurse poked her head in. The parents are here again demanding to see her. Dr. Patel's expression hardened. Let them in, but only briefly, and they are to be supervised. My parents entered cautiously, their usual confidence noticeably diminished. My mother's mascara was smudged, my father's tie loosened. They looked shell-shocked. Vanessa. My mother began, her voice uncharacteristically hesitant. We did not know. You have to believe that. Did not know what I asked, though I knew exactly what she meant. They found your pills in Melody's purse, my father said, his voice hollow. All of them? The ones from this morning and others. I told you she was taking them, I reminded them, unable to keep the bitterness from my voice. I told you over and over. We thought you were exaggerating, my mother whispered. You always seemed to manage your condition just fine because I was taking my medication correctly. The heart rate monitor beside me beeped faster, reflecting my rising anger until Melody started stealing it. Mr. and Mrs. Moore, Detective Ramirez interjected. Your daughter experienced a life-threatening medical emergency today as a direct result of medication theft. Do you understand the seriousness of what has happened? My father nodded mutely while my mother dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. Where is Melody now? I asked. My parents exchanged glances. At the police station, my father finally answered. They are questioning her. She confessed. My mother added, her voice breaking. When they found the pills, she just broke down. Said she never meant for you to get so sick that she just wanted to discredit you before the hearing. The revelation should have brought satisfaction, but I felt only a profound sadness. She could have killed me. The detective told us, my father said quietly. Status epilepticus, they called it. They said it can be fatal. Dr. Patel nodded gravely. Prolonged seizures can cause permanent brain damage or death if not treated promptly. Miss Moore was fortunate that she was in a public place where help was immediately available. If I had been alone in my apartment, I did not need to finish the thought. Everyone in the room understood the implication. Judge Harmon wants to see you when you are recovered. Mr. Harrison told me she was quite disturbed by what happened in her courtroom. She has placed a hold on all proceedings related to your grandmother's estate pending the outcome of the criminal investigation. Detective Ramirez closed his notebook. We will need a formal statement from you when you are feeling stronger, Miss Moore. But I want you to know that we are taking this very seriously. Theft of prescription medication is a felony, and given the potential consequences, additional charges may apply. My parents flinched at his words, the reality of their daughter facing criminal charges clearly sinking in. She said she was selling some of them, my mother admitted in a small voice, to college students who used them as study drugs. That is how she afforded that new car last month. The revelation hit me like a physical blow. Not only had Melody been stealing my medication to sabotage me, but she had been profiting from it, endangering others in the process. I think that is enough for now, Doctor, Patel said firmly, noting my distress. Miss Moore needs rest. As Detective Ramirez and my parents prepared to leave, my father turned back, his face etched with regret. We should have believed you, Vanessa. I do not know if you can ever forgive us, but we are so sorry. After they left, Lisa squeezed my hand. Your grandmother would be proud of you. You know, you fought for yourself when no one else would. I should not have had to fight my own family. I whispered, tears finally coming. Not over something like this. Mr. Harrison remained behind after the others had gone. Judge Harmon asked me to tell you that she intends to enforce your grandmother's will exactly as written. She believes Ellen Moore had excellent judgment about what her granddaughters needed. He paused, adjusting his glasses. She also mentioned that there may be grounds for a civil suit should you wish to pursue that route. I shook my head wearily. I just want my health and my peace. Of course, he nodded. Rest now. We can discuss the details when you are stronger. As he left, I sank back against the hospital pillows, exhausted, but with a strange sense of validation. After years of having my condition minimized and dismissed, the truth had finally been exposed in the most dramatic way possible. The price had been high nearly my life, but the gaslighting was over. The medication dripping into my IV brought blessed relief, my body gradually returning to its properly medicated state. As I drifted towards sleep, I remembered Grandma Ellen's words. Your health is not negotiable. She had been right, as she so often was. The inheritance she left me wasn't just about money. It was about the validation of my needs and the recognition of my reality. It had taken a seizure in a courtroom to make my family see the truth. But finally, undeniably, they were being forced to face it. 1 week after my seizure in court, I stood once again before Judge Harmon, this time steady on my feet and clear-eyed. The courtroom was the same, but everything else had changed. Mr. Harrison stood beside me, his reassuring presence, a stark contrast to the tension of our previous appearance. Miss Moore. Judge Harmon greeted me, her stern face softening slightly. I am pleased to see you recovered. How are you feeling? Much better, Your Honor. Thank you, I replied. My voice was stronger than it had been in weeks. My medication levels finally stabilized under careful medical supervision. Very good. Let us proceed with the matter at hand. She adjusted her glasses and regarded the courtroom with an authoritative gaze. My parents sat in the gallery, subdued and uncertain, a dramatic departure from their previous confidence. Melody was notably absent, represented only by her attorney, Miss Reynolds, who looked distinctly uncomfortable. This court has reviewed the facts of this case extensively, Judge Harmon began. What transpired in this courtroom last week was not merely a medical emergency, but the direct result of criminal behavior that endangered Ms. Moore's life. She fixed her gaze on my parents. Mr. and Mrs. Moore, I am deeply troubled by your role in these events. While you may not have stolen your daughter's medication yourselves, your persistent dismissal of her concerns enabled this dangerous situation to continue. My mother dabbed at her eyes with a tissue, while my father stared at his hands. As for Melody Moore, the judge continued the criminal charges against her will proceed in a separate court. However, her actions have direct bearing on the matter of Ellen Moore's estate. Judge Harmon lifted a document. I have here the last will and testament of Ellen Grace Moore. Having reviewed it thoroughly and confirmed that it was executed with full mental capacity and without undue influence, I am enforcing it in its entirety. She paused, making eye contact with me. Furthermore, I am adding provisions to protect Miss Vanessa Moore's interests. First, the executive will establish a medical trust to ensure that Miss Moore's healthcare needs are met without interference. Second, I am issuing a restraining order preventing Melody Moore from having any contact with Vanessa Moore or access to her residence or workplace. Miss Reynolds rose to object, but Judge Harmon silenced her with a raised hand. Counsel, your client is facing felony charges for theft of prescription medication with intent to distribute, along with potential charges of reckless endangerment. I suggest you focus your energies on her criminal defense rather than contesting these reasonable protective measures. The finality in her tone left no room for argument. As Miss Reynolds sank back into her seat, Judge Harmon turned her attention to my parents, Mr. and Mrs. Moore. While you bear no legal liability in this case, I urge you to reflect deeply on your moral responsibility. The preference you have shown for one daughter over the other, and your willingness to dismiss serious medical concerns nearly had fatal consequences. My father nodded solemnly while my mother wept silently. This court is adjourned. With a decisive bang of her gavel, Judge Harmon closed the proceedings. Outside the courtroom, my parents approached hesitantly, keeping a respectful distance as if afraid I might shatter. Vanessa, my father, began, his voice rough with emotion. We do not know what to say. There is nothing to say, I replied, not unkindly, but firmly. Melody is facing the consequences of her actions, and now you are facing the consequences of yours. We never thought she would. My mother started. That is the problem. I interrupted. You never thought about me at all. My epilepsy was always an inconvenience, something to minimize or ignore. Grandma was the only one who took it seriously. We want to make things right. My father insisted. Whatever it takes. I regarded them thoughtfully. The anger I had carried for so long had been replaced by something quieter, more resolute. I cannot tell you how to do that. That is work you need to figure out for yourselves. As they stood there looking lost and diminished, I felt a strange sense of power. Not vindictive, but self-protective. I need space, I told them. When I am ready to talk, I will reach out. In the weeks that followed, the legal proceedings against Melody moved forward. She had been caught with not only my medication, but several other prescription drugs she had apparently been selling on campus. The detective called to inform me that she was facing multiple felony charges and the possibility of significant jail time. Meanwhile, I found myself unexpectedly free. With the inheritance secured and my health stabilized, I was able to move into a new apartment in a secure building, creating physical distance from the toxic family dynamics that had endangered me for so long. Lisa helped me settle in, arranging furniture and hanging curtains. How does it feel? She asked as we collapsed onto my new couch after a day of unpacking. Having your own place on your terms? Surreal, I admitted. But good, really good. My neurologist, Dr. Walker, was pleased with my recovery. Your medication levels are perfect, she told me during my follow-up appointment. And the medical trust the judge established ensures you will never have to worry about affording your treatment again. Grandma would be happy about that. I said she always worried about my healthcare costs. She was a wise woman. Dr. Walker agreed. Many families struggle to understand chronic conditions like epilepsy. The invisibility of it can make it hard for them to grasp its seriousness. My family went beyond not understanding, I said woefully. They actively enabled someone who was endangering me. Doctor. Walker nodded sympathetically. The road to rebuilding those relationships will be long if you choose to take it. I am not sure I do, I admitted. At least not yet. My parents continued their campaign of apology, sending carefully worded letters and voicemails expressing their remorse. I read and listened to each one, but maintained my distance, allowing myself the space to heal, not just physically, but emotionally. One evening, a formal letter arrived from my parents. Unlike their previous messages, this one acknowledged not just the recent events, but years of favoritism and dismissal. "We failed you," they wrote. "Not just in the matter of your medication, but in recognizing and respecting your needs throughout your life. We are attending family counseling to understand our patterns of behavior and how they harmed you. We do not expect forgiveness, but we want you to know that we are committed to changing." It was the first communication that felt genuine, that went beyond superficial apology to true recognition. I did not respond immediately, but I folded the letter carefully and placed it in my desk drawer. A small seed of possibility had been planted. Melody, meanwhile, had been ordered into a rehabilitation program as part of a plea agreement. The prosecutor called to inform me that she would serve 6 months in a minimum security facility, followed by extensive probation and community service. "She asked if she could write to you," the prosecutor said. I told her that would violate the restraining order, but that I would pass along the request. "Not now," I replied firmly. "Maybe not ever." The most unexpected communication came from Judge Harmon herself. A handwritten note arrived on heavy judicial stationery. "Miss Moore," it read, "I have presided over many family disputes in my career, but few have revealed such a stark failure of parental duty and sibling respect. Your dignity throughout these proceedings has been commendable. I have taken the liberty of referring your case to the Epilepsy Foundation, which is considering using it anonymously, of course, in their educational materials about medical gaslighting. Should you wish to participate in their advocacy work, I believe your experience could help others. Wishing you continued health and peace, Judge Catherine Harmon." I read the note several times, touched by her personal outreach and intrigued by the possibility of turning my painful experience into something that might help others. For the first time since the ordeal began, I felt a sense of purpose emerging from the pain. That evening, as I prepared for bed in my new apartment, I caught a glimpse of myself in the bathroom mirror. The woman looking back at me was changed, not just physically recovered, but somehow more solid, more present in her own skin. I had been forced to fight for my life in the most literal sense. And in doing so, I had claimed a new kind of authority over it. The medication safe on my counter was a reminder of what I had endured, but also of what I had survived. As I swallowed my evening dose, I felt not resignation, but respect for my own needs and boundaries. My health was indeed non-negotiable, and finally, I had the power to ensure it was treated that way. 6 months after the courtroom seizure that changed everything, I sat across from my therapist, Dr. Marissa Chen, in her sunlit office. The space had become a sanctuary of sorts, a place where I could untangle the complex emotions of my family trauma without judgment. "How are you feeling about the support group tonight?" Dr. Chen asked, referring to the epilepsy peer support meeting I had agreed to attend. "Nervous," I admitted. "I have never really talked about my condition with a group of strangers before, but they are not exactly strangers, are they?" "They share your experience with epilepsy." I nodded thoughtfully. That is true. Growing up, I never knew anyone else with seizures. My family made me feel like I was the only one, like I was broken somehow. And now I know that was part of the problem. The isolation made it easier for them to dismiss my needs. I twisted the bracelet on my wrist, a medical ID I now wore proudly rather than hiding it as I once had. Grandma Ellen was right about community being important. My inheritance had provided me with more than financial security. It had given me the freedom to create a life designed around my well-being. I had found a new apartment in a building with 24-hour security, ensuring no one could access my home without my permission. My remote work as a graphic designer had expanded, allowing me to create a schedule that accommodated my health needs without apology. Most importantly, I had begun the long process of healing from years of medical gaslighting and family dysfunction. Dr. Chen had been instrumental in helping me recognize patterns of behavior I had normalized, from downplaying symptoms to apologizing for medical necessities. "Have you heard from your parents this week?" she asked. "They called on Sunday. It was better." I had established careful boundaries with my parents, agreeing to short, regular phone calls as they continued their family counseling. They asked questions about my medication schedule instead of changing the subject. Small steps matter," Dr. Chen affirmed. "And Melody?" I shook my head. "Nothing directly." Her probation officer sent the quarterly update required by the court. She is completing her community service at a senior center. Melody had served her 6-month sentence and was now living in a halfway house as part of her probation. The restraining order remained in effect, a boundary I was not yet ready to reconsider. "Do you think you will ever reconcile with her doctor?" Chen asked. I considered the question carefully, as I had many times before. I honestly do not know. What she did was not just a betrayal, it was dangerous. She was willing to risk my life for money and attention. That is a fair assessment. Dr. Chen acknowledged reconciliation is never an obligation, especially when trust has been broken so fundamentally. After my therapy session, I met Lisa for lunch at our favorite cafe. Our friendship had deepened through the ordeal, her unwavering support a contrast to my family's failures. "So, you are really doing it?" she asked excitedly. "The epilepsy awareness speaking gig." I nodded, stirring my iced tea. "The Epilepsy Foundation asked me to share my story at their fundraiser next month. Judge Harmon will be there too. That is amazing, Vanessa." From courtroom collapse to keynote speaker in less than a year. Well, not exactly keynote, I laughed. Just a 10-minute personal testimony, but still it feels important. The judge's suggestion that my experience might help others had planted a seed that had grown steadily over the months. I had begun by anonymously sharing my story on the Epilepsy Foundation website, then participating in a panel discussion on medical advocacy. The response had been overwhelming, with many people reaching out to share similar experiences of having their conditions dismissed or minimized by family members. "Have you decided what you will say?" Lisa asked. "I am still working on it," I admitted. Finding the balance between honesty about what happened and not turning it into a family takedown. "You know, your compassion amazes me," Lisa said, shaking her head. "After everything they put you through." I shrugged. "It is not really about compassion. I just do not want my story to be defined by what they did. I want it to be about what I learned and how I moved forward." Later that afternoon, I received an unexpected letter from Judge Harmon. Unlike her official correspondence, this was a personal note on plain stationery. "Dear Vanessa," it began, "I hope this finds you well. I wanted to reach out before the foundation event to express my admiration for your courage in sharing your experience. In my years on the bench, I have seen many families torn apart by inheritance disputes, but few cases have affected me as deeply as yours. Your grandmother would be proud of how you have honored her legacy, not just through managing your inheritance wisely, but by becoming an advocate for others with epilepsy. I look forward to seeing you at the event. Warmly, Catherine Harmon." The letter brought tears to my eyes, not from sadness, but from a sense of validation. Judge Harmon had been witness to one of the most vulnerable moments of my life, yet she had seen strength where I had only felt helplessness. That evening, I attended my first epilepsy support group meeting at a community center downtown. 8 people sat in a circle, ranging from a teenager with his mother to an elderly man with thick glasses. The facilitator, a woman named Janelle, who had lived with epilepsy for 20 years, welcomed me warmly. "Would you like to introduce yourself?" she asked gently. I took a deep breath. My name is Vanessa. I have had epilepsy since I was 15. For a long time, I felt very alone with this condition, but I am trying to change that. The group nodded encouragingly, and one by one, they shared their own stories. Some had supportive families who had educated themselves about epilepsy, while others had faced discrimination and misunderstanding. The teenager, Alex, described his frustration with classmates who treated him differently after witnessing a seizure. People act like epilepsy is who I am, not just something I have, he said. I know exactly what you mean, I replied. My family treated me like I was my condition, like it defined me completely. How did you deal with that? Alex asked. I considered the question thoughtfully. Not well at first. I tried to minimize it to pretend it affected me less than it did, but eventually I learned that pretending only made things worse. Now I am trying to be honest about my needs without apology. As the meeting progressed, I found myself sharing more than I had intended, including a condensed version of what had happened with Melody. To my surprise, several group members nodded in recognition. Medical sabotage is more common than people realize, Janelle explained, especially in families where there is already dysfunction or competition. What happened to you was extreme, but the dismissal of symptoms is something most of us have experienced. By the end of the meeting, I had exchanged contact information with several members and agreed to return the following week. Walking to my car, I felt lighter somehow, as if sharing my story had relieved some of its weight. The next morning, I received a text from my mother. Thinking of you today. Hope you are taking care of yourself. Love, Mom. It was a simple message, but notable for what it did not contain. No demands for response, no guilt, no dismissal of my condition, just acknowledgement and good wishes. I texted back a brief thank you after only a moment's hesitation. Small steps indeed. As the weeks passed, I continued to build my new life. The medical trust established by Judge Harmon ensured that my healthcare needs were fully covered. I used a portion of my inheritance to create an emergency fund, something Grandma Ellen had always emphasized the importance of, especially for someone with a chronic condition. The remainder I invested cautiously following the advice of the financial planner Mr. Harrison had recommended. Your grandmother wanted to provide you with security. He had explained not just for immediate needs, but for the future. The day before the Epilepsy Foundation fundraiser, I visited Grandma Ellen's grave bringing a bouquet of her favorite daisies. The cemetery was peaceful in the late afternoon, light birds singing in the oak trees that bordered the grounds. I wish you could see me now, Grandma, I said softly, arranging the flowers against her headstone. You always said I was stronger than I knew. I think I am finally starting to believe you. I told her about the support group, my therapy progress, the speaking engagement. It felt right to share these milestones with her, even if only symbolically. I am not angry anymore, I realized aloud. Not at Mom and Dad, not even at Melody. I am just free. The evening of the fundraiser arrived with perfect early autumn weather. The venue, an elegant hotel ballroom, was filled with medical professionals, advocates, patients, and their families. Judge Harmon found me before the program began elegant in a navy suit, not unlike her judicial robes. Venisane, she greeted me warmly. You look wonderful. Thank you for suggesting I get involved, I replied. It has made such a difference. I am glad. Sometimes purpose can be found in the most difficult experiences. When my turn came to speak, I approached the podium with surprising calm. The faces looking back at me were attentive, open, free of the judgment I had feared for so long. My name is Vanessa Moore, I began. For 13 years, I have lived with epilepsy. For most of that time, I believed that my condition was a burden I had to minimize, hide, or apologize for. My family reinforced this belief through years of dismissal and ultimately through actions that nearly cost me my life. I shared my story simply and honestly, from my grandmother's supportive approach to the courtroom seizure and its aftermath. What I learned through this ordeal was not just about epilepsy, but about self, advocacy, about the non-negotiable right to have my medical needs taken seriously, about surrounding myself with people who reinforce rather than undermine my well-being. As I spoke, I noticed a few people wiping away tears, others nodding in recognition. Today, I am not defined by what happened to me, but by how I responded to it, by the boundaries I set, the community I found, and the voice I am still learning to use. My grandmother once told me that health is not negotiable. I now understand that this applies not just to physical health, but to the health of our relationships, our self-respect, and our sense of agency. I concluded with words I had carefully considered. If you take one thing from my story, let it be this: believe yourself when others do not. Trust your experience of your own body and mind, and know that you deserve care that honors, rather than dismisses, your reality. The applause that followed was warm and affirming. After the formal program ended, several people approached to share their own experiences of medical gaslighting and family denial. Each conversation reinforced what the support group had begun to teach me. I was not alone in my struggle, and my voice could help others find theirs. Judge Harmon found me as the event was winding down. That was powerful. Vanessa, you have a gift for advocacy. I am still learning, I admitted, but it feels right using what happened to help others. That is how healing often works, she replied thoughtfully. We transform our wounds into wisdom that others can use. As I drove home that night, I reflected on the journey of the past 9 months. From the terrifying courtroom collapse to this moment of purpose and community, I had traversed a landscape of betrayal, vindication, and ultimately reclamation. The inheritance Grandma Ellen had left me was valuable, certainly, but her true legacy was in teaching me to stand firm in my truth, even when those closest to me refused to see it. My phone chimed with a text as I parked outside my apartment building. It was from Lisa. "So proud of you tonight. Your grandma would be too." I smiled, typing back, "Thank you for believing me when no one else would." Inside my apartment, I followed my evening routine with the same care Grandma Ellen had taught me years ago. As I sorted my medication into the lockbox, I still used more from habit now than necessity. I felt a deep sense of peace. And my health was no longer a battleground, but simply a part of me, neither hidden nor exaggerated, just honestly tended. Have you ever had to fight to be believed about something important in your life? I would love to hear your stories in the comments below. Like and subscribe if this resonated with you, and share with someone who might need to hear that their experiences are valid, even when others dismiss them. Thank you for listening to my journey, and remember, the strength to advocate for yourself is already within you, even when it feels impossible. Until next time, take care of yourselves and each other.